Okay, morning. There's something I'm going to do first before I start. That was my talk that I prepared for today. I'm going to change it slightly. I'm going to need some help here. Can everybody see here? Okay, and the reason why I tore this up is because a lot of what I was going to say has just been said. So I now really need to improvise. Okay. On a serious note, though, I'm here to talk about managing in dynamically changing environments with a focus on management itself. So I'm going to use a model to quickly explain management to you, and then I'm going to put forward a recommendation in terms of how we should be dealing with dynamically changing business environments. When you look at management, in essence, I have an organization. Organization consists out of a number of components. There's a lady by the name of Elizabeth Dostal. She wrote a book on systems thinking. She divides an organization into a number of aspects. One of them is an ethos aspect. It contains the values of an organization, which ultimately anchors the behavior of the organization. It has a quotidian vision and mission, the vision being out there, something that the organization is working towards, that it wants to achieve, that it wants to end up being. And it has mission steps that takes the organization there. It has aspects of processes and activities and structure upon which organizations implement their plans. So it provides a sort of a platform for planning and implementation. It has a governance aspect, which makes sure that the intent of the organization matches its behavior, or the other way around, that the behavior matches the intent. Because a lot of times, organizations has the intention of doing one thing, but end up doing another. And then, of course, as Professor Powell just pointed out, an organization doesn't operate as an island. It operates in an environment. And this environment consists out of a number of spheres, environmental spheres, which contain a number of other systems: politics, economics, buyers, suppliers, competition, technological development, social trend changes. And that, very, very quickly put, provides you with this picture here. So I have an organization. Don't ask the question why I draw it like this. Just know that for today, this is an organization. Now, management, in simple terms, according to Bardnos, is really just about application of resources, 4 generic resources: money, people, infrastructure, and information. And what I do is I apply those resources throughout the organization with the aim of delivering some sort of a product or a service. And that product or service, I always draw it as a little triangle, on the top has some sort of a dominant attribute: quality or price, or range or variety. So you go to a store because it has the best quality. And all these resources are being applied through this organization to make sure that they yield this, and that they become very, very good at yielding that. And that then, of course, goes into the marketplace where I have consumers buying my product. So management really, in essence, is a very simple activity. So why then the big fuss? If we know that management is about planning, implementation, and evaluation, if we know that planning is about scanning the environment, gathering information, crafting scenarios, making strategy selections, taking the strategy, implementing it, evaluating it at the end of the year, and then start all over again next, what is the big deal? What is the big deal about dynamic environments? Why is it even on the agenda? Why do we need to treat dynamic environments as some sort of a genesis of something new in management? Why can't we just carry on doing what we've always done? And just scan the environment, build scenarios, select a strategy, implement, and evaluate. I'll tell you why not. I think most of us know the answer to that. It's because we are not succeeding at the moment as businesses internationally. We're not getting out of the recession. We're not turning the tide on unemployment. We're not enabling our organizations to remain competitive. That's the problem. You see, you can go and look for the problem with a recession. You can go and look for the problem with political instability. You can go and look for the problem insofar as management is concerned with labor. Yes, they probably all impact on the organization, but at the end of the day, it's about sustainable competitiveness and what I need to do to keep my doors open and not shut. So, let's talk a little bit about competitiveness. Porter tells us that competitiveness resides in the organization, not in the product and not in the marketplace. There's another author by the surname of Christopher. He works with strategic supply chains, and he goes so far as to say that there's actually nothing competitive in strategy, nothing whatsoever. The competitive ability of an organization actually lies in where the job gets done, in its operational ability. So down here, if I can take this circle as an example and split it into two and say that the top part is the planning part and the bottom part is the doing part, this is actually where it happens. And from here, I apply my 4 generic resources mentioned to enable me to retain my competitiveness. Now, let's talk dynamic environments. And yes, the world is changing, and it is changing faster, or it isn't changing fast. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is we are not succeeding well enough to change the way things are going at the moment. And that's a strong argument to say that we need to change the way in which we think about management. That's where we need to start. You look at researchers such as Voros, Chu, Wilbur. They will all tell you that if you want to start changing things, you need to start by thinking differently about them. This is the problem, in essence, about management that we experience a lot, specifically on the continent. We have become so used to think of management as the starting point by looking at the environment. That's where we start. And there's a high reliance on us getting the future right, making the right scenario, building the right scenario options, making the right strategic choice. Because we believe that our competitive edge lies in our level of predictability. And then tonight, just before you put your fashion onto the floor tomorrow, Oprah Winfrey decides, I'm going to wear green and not pastel. Or Bon Jovi decides, I'm going to wear leathers and not jeans. And those clips go onto YouTube, and those clips spread throughout the world, and tomorrow all of a sudden, as an organization, you're sitting with change that none of your scenarios foresaw. Because you based your strategy on a sense of knowing what the future is about, knowing what the environment is about. And what we're trying to tell organizations is, fine, do scanning, of course, I need to know what's going on out there in the world, but don't, as we term it, slingshot your competitive ability around that environmental factor, because if it changes, you're not ready to absorb that change. Quick example, in the late 1990s in South Africa, if you exported your wine to the UK, you would get 20 rands for £1. Now, a bottle of wine at the time was going for, a good bottle of wine was going for about 22 rand in South Africa. So what most wine farmers did is they started exporting to the UK. And there they could get £4. So all of a sudden they're getting 80 rand a bottle and not 22. Great, it makes perfect business sense. So there on the outside, in the contextual realm, I have the rand-dollar exchange rate or the rand-pound exchange rate, and this is the organization. So I now do this. I slingshot my competitive ability around a factor of influence of which I have no control. So what do? They put this wine into the UK market, and they establish dominance on price. Sounds perfectly fine, because they can. Because they only need £4. So they go in under the French bottle, under the French price, under the French wine price. And then what happens? 6 months later, the rand strengthens. So now all of a sudden, I'm dealing not with 20 rand to a pound, but 13 rand to the pound. What do I need to do now? What would you do? Can you increase your price? Can't.
No.
Because you're already established as a price leader. You can't now increase your price. You now need to change something in your model here, in the mechanics of the organization. But you can't. Because everything here is structured towards that factor there. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call luck. You don't build competitiveness on luck. In 6 months' time, in the Western Cape alone, we went from 350 registered exporters to 26. And all of them will say to you, the rand is killing us. It's the exchange rate. Rubbish. It's not the exchange rate. It's the fact that you structured your competitive edge around a factor of which you have no control. So the change in thinking, in essence, and with this I'm ending, that Voros, Wilbur, Chu, and Rhesus alike are recommending is to start not by looking at strategy, but start by looking at organizational flexibility. Because yes, you can build on levels of predictability, but what if they change all of a sudden? What if there is a YouTube clip that is seen by millions and it starts a trend that you're not ready with? Quick story, and this is really my last point, just to illustrate the point. Sarah Palin runs alongside Senator McCain against Barack Obama 3-4 years ago, presidential election. She makes her inaugural speech. And the evening that she makes it, across the world, many people are viewing this, obviously. There's a lot of excitement about this election. During her speech, she wears spectacles, those nice, fashionable black spectacles. No big deal. The next day, specifically in Japan, the demand for those spectacles went through the roof. Now, there's two ways in which you can look at that. If you are typically somebody that likes to predict the future, your question the next morning in the boardroom is going to be, how could this happen? How could we not foresee this? How big is this trend? What are we going to do about it? Get the planners in here. That's the one response. The other response is to say, we don't care why it's a trend. We don't care why people all of a sudden like these spectacles. We just care about how quickly we can produce them. 4 days later, 7 of the largest manufacturing firms in Japan, across Japan, were pumping out these spectacles by the millions. They've made the switch in thinking. It's not about predicting the future. It's not about making a dynamic environment not dynamic. Because by analyzing it, it's not getting less dynamic. It's not getting less complex. It's getting more complex. The focus in terms of management and sustainable competitiveness resides in your ability to build flexible organizations. With that, I thank you.